very nice to see you this afternoon. Thank you for coming. It's lovely to have all of you as guests here. After following up behind these young women who have planned all of this and the intonations who have sung all of this, I'm not sure I should be the one speaking right now. But I'll try to at least give you some background information this afternoon on William and Mary and the first women who came to William and Mary, and a few of them who actually stayed on at William and Mary and stayed here for a long period of time. In 1918, the College of William and Mary enrolled its first women students. And there were several reasons why 1918 was the time for women to come to William and Mary. 1917, 1918, World War I was going on. The enrollment at William and Mary had dropped from a little over 200 to about 149. So young men were enrolling in the Army or in things to help with the war effort, and not quite as many young men were here at the college. But going along with that, at the same time, beginning in 1910 and going at least until 1920, there was a very strong movement in the state to provide a 4-year liberal arts education for women at a public institution. And that wasn't being offered in the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia offered 4 normal schools in which young women could go and prepare to be teachers, and they would study for 2 years and then go into elementary schools or high schools. But the movement was to try to get a coordinate college for women established at the University of Virginia. And they tried it from 1910 to 1920, and the General Assembly voted it down every 2 years because most of the alumni in the General Assembly were UVA alums who didn't want young women coming into Charlottesville. Well, President Lyon G. Tyler was president of the college. He saw his enrollment diminishing somewhat, and he saw this strong movement in the state of Virginia to offer a liberal arts education at a public institution for women. So President Tyler consulted with the Board of Visitors and consulted with his faculty, and he received enough approval. There was some disagreement, but he received enough approval to take it to the General Assembly. And the General Assembly had no problems, or at least very few problems, in allowing coeducation to come to the college. So in March of 1918, the General Assembly passed a resolution that would permit coeducation to come to William and Mary. And just to make sure you remember why it had to go to the General Assembly, William and Mary had become a state school in 1906. So for this major change to take place, the General Assembly had to vote its approval. So in the fall of 1918, the first 24 young women came to the college. And although young men were a little skeptical about young women coming and attending their school, the young women that year were welcomed, and things began on a very nice start. At the end of that first year, President Lyon G. Tyler retired. He had been president since 1888, so he was it was time for him to step down. And the Board of Visitors looked for a replacement, and they went to a William and Mary alum. The president that they would hire would be Julian Alvin Carroll Chandler, J.A.C. Chandler. President Chandler had previously taught at the Women's College in Richmond. He taught at Richmond College. He had served as the superintendent of public schools in Richmond for a decade. William and Mary. And so he gladly accepted the offer, and in 1919 he became the president of William and Mary. He would serve until 1934 when he died in office. Although President Tyler brought the first women to William and Mary, it was Chandler who would make women a strong institution here at the college. So I'd like to talk to you for just a few minutes about President Chandler and the first women, and let you have an idea of who came and the numbers and how that took place. 1919, the fall of 1919, President Chandler went on an enrollment spree. He was going to make William and Mary grow, and he had big plans for the college. By the end of that first year, he had enrolled 333 students at William and Mary. 106 of those students were women. So from the very beginning, he started out bringing women to the college. By 1925, 1926, he had pushed the enrollment of the college to 1,097 students. 468 of those students were women. By the time he got to 1931, 1932, he had the peak enrollment during his administration. That year, there were 1,682 students at William and Mary. 814 were women. The next year was a real high mark for women. 1932, 1933, we're in the Depression. The enrollment was still 1,602. But for the first time, women outnumbered men at William and Mary. That year, for the first time, there were 805 women. There were 797 men. So by a little bit, the women took over. This would not go without some controversy. There had been controversy from William and Mary alums at the beginning who wanted to make sure that the ratio of men to women here stayed at about 60% men and 40% women. Well, Chandler was going to make this college grow, and he had no problem in bringing women students here. After the women became the largest number of students, there would be a movement again to go back to that 60-40 ratio. But World War II came, and the number of men students really dropped, and the number